One of the things that all of us have in common is that, as you're making that transition in life from childhood to adulthood, whether we do this consciously or subconsciously, all of us are trying to answer the question of what works for me. I know what my parents told me. I know what the school told me. I know what my teacher told me. I know what the church said. I know what my granddad always said. But I've got to figure out what works for me. Now, for some of you, that happened your senior year, your junior year. I've known people start this in 8th, 9th grade. But for some of you, it was that place right in the middle of high school, or some of you, it was that first year after high school, or your first year working, and you were trying to figure out, I need to know if all of this stuff I've been told works for me. In fact, some of you decided, I'm going to do everything they told me not to do to see if I'm missing out on something, if some of the stuff they didn't want me to do actually works for me. In some ways, we spend this time in life, and all of us are sort of experimenting, for lack of a better word, with our life, trying to figure out, am I missing out on something? Is something that they told me didn't work, does it work for me? Maybe it was when you got your driver's license, or maybe it was when you, again, went to college, or maybe it was after college for you, or maybe it was that first year you got a new job in a new city, and you were sort of anonymous, and you were just you're going to try everything out, and nobody really knew you, and you're going to figure out who you really were. But for most of us, to one extent or another, subconsciously or consciously, we do this thing where we just sort of experiment with different thoughts and different ways of doing things, and we're trying to answer the question, how do I get happy? What makes me happy? What people make me happy? What kind of relationships make me happy? And so in this period of life, you spend some happiness money, and you have some happiness relationships, and you go some happiness places, and then you get out of some happiness relationships, and you pay some happiness debts, and you're just trying to figure out, how does all of that really fit into me being the happy kind of person that I want to be? And one of the questions that you deal with in those times is you're trying to figure out, who am I going to do this with? What are we going to do? And it all sort of happening in that time of life when everything's sort of up and to the right. There's this natural growth period during that time where it's 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, and everything's changing every year. And then you go to college, and then it's after college you have that whole series of firsts. I got my first job, my first apartment, I got my first roommate, and then I get my first house, and then for some of us, it's my marriage, I get married, and then, I have my kids, and it's just this whole series of whole first things that I have. And then after you get through all of that, your kids get born, and you have their first day of school and their first game, and you go through all of that, and it all feels very exciting, and it feels like your life is progressing, and it all feels like this big adventure. And the main kind of questions in that section of life for most of us are, who am I doing this with? What are we going to do? And where are we going to go? Who's going to be there when we get there? What is it we're going to do together? And where are we all going to go together? And so we're asking these questions all the time. Who, what, where? But the one big question that doesn't come up a lot in those kind of growing, building kind of years where everything's first and everything's exciting and I'm trying to figure it out, the big question that we don't spend a lot of time on is why. It's on purpose. In fact, if somebody tries to talk to you about purpose during those times, you sort of intuitively know that purpose matters, but you're thinking to yourself, no, what I want to know is who is that? Who is she? Who is he? What are they doing over there? Where can I go? What have I not experienced yet? Who, what, where? Those are the questions I want to think about. And the whole question about why, it doesn't really enter my mind to a whole lot. And everybody sort of knows purpose matters, but during those years, it's really not the deal for us. It's what am I going to do next? Where am I going to go? What's going to be the experience we have? Where are we going to do it with? And who's going to be there when I do it? The whole issue of why, it just sort of gets put on the back burner of our life. But eventually, somewhere in life, we wind up bumping into this question of why. And I'll just say, if you're at that stage in life where right now it is for you who, what, and where, and you're trying to figure all of that out, I'll just say to you, the quicker you can get to the why question, it's better for you. And maybe all I'm going to do for you is just point you towards something that you're going to have to think about one day, and that's all you're going to get out of this. For most of us, the point of why winds up coming up to the place where we've done all the first, and we've gone all the places, and we experienced a whole bunch of things, and we tried to get happiness with him and who and her, who is that, and what are they doing, and where can I go, and you've done all of those kind of things, and then you sort of settle into and you realize, oh, I've got a job, And every day feels sort of the same. I've got a job today, a job tomorrow. And then, if you're married, then it's like, I'm not doing my job, I'm married. And then I have to take care of the kids. And, every day is just sort of this normal kind of pattern. And I do my job, I'm married, and I have kids. And then there's a vacation, yippee! And then it's back to job and married and kids. And we all sort of get into this routine where it all sort of feels the same and it all looks the same, and at some point we sort of realize, tomorrow's going to look pretty much like today. The only difference is I'm not going to look tomorrow like I do today. And at some point in life, and again, I just want to say to those of you who are in this point, the earlier you can get to this question, the better it is for you. We have to ask the question, why? Why am I doing this? And why am I going over there? And what about this thing? Why am I doing what I'm doing? We have to start thinking about the issue of purpose. Now, it's my experience, and I've watched this now for a long time, that some people, when they bump up into this issue of purpose and everything sort of gets to that job section and everything just sort of levels sort of out, they think that it isn't purpose that they need because they don't want to think about that. The back of their head says, why are you doing that? And they don't want to think about that. What they think is, I need to make a change. And so they think to themselves, if I could just have a different one, if I could have a better that, if I could have a bigger this, if I could have a cuter her, if I could have a better him, if I could have a smarter husband, if I could have a bigger house, if I could have a better car, if I could get a newer this, if I could go from a car to a motorcycle, if I could go from a motorcycle to a car, if I could have a bigger that, more powerful that, then all the thing that would happen. And the only problem with that is eventually, again, all the bigger and better, and you get to the best of everything, and then you get to a place where all of that sort of gets into, it's all the same. Eventually you come back and you've blown up one marriage to replace with another marriage, and maybe some of you a couple of times, and you've got a bunch of kids over here and a bunch of kids over here, and it all was supposed to be better, but it isn't necessarily better. And you come back and you're at the same question, but this time now you got scars. And you got pain. And you eventually come back to, and something in you again says, why? Why are you doing this? And what is this all about? And why do I always come back to this same place? Now, I'll tell you why I think you can't escape this why question, and why it just, and the reason that it just keeps coming back is because I think it was stamped in you because you're made in the image of God. Because you were made in God's image, whether you believe in God or not, God has stamped this in you when you were made, and it's why you're different than the animals are around you. It's why your dog does what he does, but you don't ever think, I wonder why I'm doing that. Why am I eating again right now? Why am I chasing my tail? They don't think those kind of things. It's why you think about why you're doing it, but they don't. And if you recognize it, it can be an awesome kind of thing. And if you don't recognize it, and you just think, I'm just discontent, and life is just sort of meh, then you run around and round and round and round you go for a few more rounds, and eventually you come back and you realize, you look in the mirror and you say to yourself, I don't think the issue is a newer or a bigger or a better or another piece of hardware or something else I get. I think the issue is its significance, its purpose. I don't think another newer or bigger, I don't think he or she is ever going to fill this void. And then hopefully at that point, you run into somebody and you notice oh, look, she's different. He's different. Oh, look at them. They have the same that I do, or they have less than I do, but they're different. And the way you experience the difference in your life is you would say, they have less than I do, or they have the same that I do, but they're content. They're content. That's the way I experience it. I see them as being content. And when you dig under the surface of content people a little bit, what you find is purpose. Because purpose has a way of taking all of this that goes into life that seems sort of the same for all of us, and it puts it sort of in boundaries, and it puts us in a frame where everything is pointing to something. Purpose takes relationships and stuff in life and goals and dreams and kids and all of these components of where we go and what we do, and it brings it to a kind of a frame in life that keeps us from doing all of these unhealthy kind of things that we do. It keeps us from being ruled by our appetites and running after another emotion. It helps us make sense out of all the little things that we wind up doing in life that just don't seem to make sense in and of themselves. It's a very powerful thing when we finally get around to the question of why. Now, it probably doesn't surprise you very much that I'm about to tell you that Jesus talked about this some, and here we are in church, and I want to talk to you about what Jesus has to say about this deal of purpose. We're in this series called Life on Mission, and last week I started by telling you that when Jesus got a group of people together and they were just beginning to follow him, he laid out to them all the ways that what he was doing, the ways that he saw God different, the world different, people different, and he said, here's this set of things that's going to make us, and here's this group of people, and this is found in the Sermon on the Mount, which is written in the book of Matthew, and Matthew's a guy that follows after Jesus, and he writes about the life of Jesus and what he saw and heard. And Matthew writes this long description down, and it's just Jesus sitting on a hillside, and he's got this group of people together, and they don't have any political power. They can't buy into anybody saying, hey, we're all going to vote this way, or we're all going to move this way, or we have power and people are going to have to listen to us. They know they don't have any political power of the government. It's the Roman government. They're under siege by the Romans. They're an occupied country. They don't have any kind of financial leverage over anybody. And Jesus says to them, and we talked about this last week, here is how God sees you. If you begin to follow me and you begin to put in place these ideals in your life, this is how God sees you in your life. This is how God looks at you and how God sees you in your life. And if you ever embrace this, I mean, if you ever decide to embrace what Jesus talks about this, he says to them, you know, you'd stop thinking about, well, when is God ever going to restore our country? And when are we going to ever get back to our greatness? And when are the Romans ever going to lower taxes? And when is the emperor ever going to be displaced? And when is all of this ever going? He said, if you would ever embrace this, no matter what the circumstances are in your life, if you embrace this, this is worth getting up every morning for. He said to them, you are the light of the world. And they're like, me? Us? I mean, we aren't anything. Nobody takes notice of it. We're just this ragtag group of people that are listening to you sitting on a hillside. I mean, we're nothing. We can't do anything. And Jesus said, this is how the Father in heaven sees those of you who are beginning to gather and beginning to follow me and beginning to take what I have said is the way that God sees the world, the way that you can lead your life. This is how God sees those of you who are following me. If you will recognize and admit, this is what God has sent you to do. God sees you as the light of the world. Through you, people are going to know that God is up to something in me, Jesus. Through you, people are going to see that. Through you, people are going to have those kind of aha kind of moments where they see the world in a whole different way, and they're going to see how it relates to their Father in heaven. You are the light of the world. It came across to them sort of like it would come to you if I showed up at your work tomorrow, or I showed up at your school, or I showed up, at the gym where you're waiting for your kids to finish gymnastics, or I showed up wherever, you're the secretary, you're the boss, and I showed up at your work and I said, hey, you are the light of the world. You'd think to yourself, he is so weird. I'm not anything. I'm just a mom who's waiting on her kids to get done. I'm just a dad who's trying to earn money for my family. I'm not any of those things. And Jesus said, no, if you would just embrace this, the people to listening to Jesus are thinking the same thing. He says, you are the light of the world. And then he keeps on, he says, you're the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Now, some of you, if you read this later or you're already following along in your translation, you notice that your translation has the word set in it. It's a city set on a hill, cannot be hidden. And the original word in the Greek language that it's written in, the word that gets translated set there, it really is the word, it means set. And it's an interesting word because it doesn't mean what you might think. It doesn't mean a city built on a hill. It means a city strategically set in a place. And it's the word that they would most often use for kind of divine decisions. And it's like Jesus is saying, you are in a city that just wound up on a hill because that's where a group of houses were and they all formed together and they built a city. Jesus says, this is like a builder went out and he looked all over all the land that he could see and he saw this hill and he thought, that's the place. That's the most strategic place in this area. And he set a city, he placed it on the hill. This is the best place that it could be. He says, a city set on a hill, strategically set on a hill, cannot be hidden, he adds. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, here's the word again, they put it, it's the same word, they strategically put it on its stand. And he's just saying to them what all of them knew. He said, you know, you don't have a lot of money for, oil and those kind of things. So when you light a lamp, you don't just place it randomly anywhere. You light the lamp and you don't put it over in the corner on the floor. You don't put it over by the door. He said, you set it strategically. You put it on a stand up in the corner of the room, or you put it on the mantle. You put it high so that everybody in the room can experience the benefit of the light. He said, in the same way, he goes, a little bit of light, if placed in the right place, it goes a long way, and everybody in the house is impacted by a well-placed, a strategically set light. He says, in the same way that people strategically put a light in the right place, and a builder strategically puts a city in the right place, in the same way, let your light shine before men, which means this is not something that's internal for me. I'm going to let my light shine in such a way that it's before men. They're going to be able to notice this. He says, this is not something to believe in my heart. This is not a conviction I hold. This is not silent and personal to me. He says, let your light shine before men that they may, what's the next word? What is it? What is it, Madras? What's the next word? See. It's see. I want you to do something that people can see. I don't want you just to believe something. I don't want you to just hold a conviction. I don't want this to be personal and private to you. I want you to do something that will connect with something internal, something that's true about you internal. I want you to do something, good deeds. I want you to do it that people will see that, and they won't praise you. They'll praise your Father in heaven. I want them to see you, but I want them to praise your Father in heaven. I want them to recognize, I want them to see what you've done, and I want them to recognize in that your Father in heaven. In other words, I want you to embrace the fact that your purpose in life is to be a light, which means you go out and you do things and you're thoughtful enough and you're strategic enough. You do things in such a way that people will connect the dots between who you are and the God you follow. That people will see what you do, and they won't just see who you are. They will connect the dots. They don't just see you and say, oh, she is always so joyful. Oh, you know what? He's really so wise. Oh, you know what? He's kind, and people love to be around him. They're just such fine folks. Those are such good people. Man, what fine folks those people are. He says, I don't want them to just say, she's so sweet and she's such a good lady and she always cared about people and I just love her. She's just my best friend. Jesus is saying, I want you to do all that you can do, just like you would strategically place a lamp. I want you to do everything you can that people will see what you do, and they will connect the dots between what you do and the God that you follow, so that they won't only see the kind of person you are, but they will connect the kind of person you are to the God that you follow. Jesus said to them, and he says to us, you are like a city set, strategically placed, like a lamp that has been lit and strategically placed on a stand. Now I want you to figure out, how do you shine in a way where you've been set, where you've been placed, that you will draw people's attention, not to wow, she's so good, and she's so kind, and he's so sweet, and they're so gentle, and she's so joyful, and they're so loving, and they are just such good people. I don't want them to be drawn to your consistency. I don't want them to be drawn to your honesty. I don't want them to be drawn to your generosity and how you help people around you. I want them to see that, and you've strategically done it in such a way that they will be able to connect the dots between who you are and who your God is. For that is why you are here. You are the light of the world. Now, this isn't easy. It isn't. And really, there are two pretty big implications of this. And next week, when we wrap up this short little Life on Mission series, we're going to get real specific on this. And I know for many of you, some of you, you've been followers of Jesus a while, and this is old hat to you. But before I am done today, I want to try, if I can, I want to stir the pot a little bit. I want to try to do what I can to stir this up and to make you think about it. And I know some of you are thinking, okay, this is a point. I've been wondering what's going to happen. They're going to tell us to go out in the lobby afterwards and pick up the signs and go stand on the street corners and yell at people. Or they're going to ask us to get stuff and hand it out on Saturday, going door to door in our neighborhood. That's not who we are. That's not what I'm about to say. So you can just relax. I'm not about to make you into that weird church person. That's not what I'm talking about on this, and that's not what Jesus is talking about. But there are two implications of this thing that I really want the followers of Christ in this room, I want you to think about. I want you to wrestle with this in your groups this week when you talk to each other about this. And these are the things that I want you to talk about, and it's what I really want you to think about this week on next steps. So if you would, right now, even though we're not close to being done, so if you normally check out when I get the next steps, don't check out yet, because we're not close to done yet. I have some stuff I want to stir up, but I want you to go ahead and get this card. I want you to go ahead and put your name on it. And if you're new around here, every week, this is not odd. We ask people every week, not just because you were here. We ask people to fill this out, put a number where we can text you or email address where we can connect with you. And really, if it's your first time, I just want you to know we're so honored that you came. We're glad that you gave us this hour of time. And I bet your friend who invited you, or however you wound up here, we don't think it's accidental. We think you're here on purpose. And we want to connect with you. We're not going to do any weird. We're not coming to your house. We're not going to take your name and try to find up, how much money you make or ask you for a donation. We're not doing any of those things. We just want to know you were here. And maybe for you, the only honest next step is you could say, hey, I'm a little bit intrigued, and I'll take that 3-week challenge and I'll come back next week. Well, you put your name on here. We'll pray for you about that. You can check that box in the back that says, I'll come back next week. But for those of you who are already followers of Christ, I want to talk to you about the other next steps on here, and I want to stir it, and I want you to honestly try to engage with this and think about this a little bit. And the first one is this. This is for the rest of you. I want you to think about this for a minute. I want you to deal with the fact and answer the question. If you're a follower of Jesus, you have strategically been placed for a purpose. You have been strategically placed where you are for a purpose. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, I'm placed here on purpose. I mean, the only reason I'm even here is because I lost a job in Texas, and this is the only place I could get a job. So I moved out here, and this is random. I mean, this is just what had to happen. I mean, I'm only here because I followed her out here. I came here, and I'm only in church today because of her. It's not strategic. This is not on purpose. This is random. I know some of you are thinking, this isn't strategic. I'm not strategically placed because I was happy. I loved my school. I had my friends. I was in high school. I was going to graduate. And then my dad, he moved us all the way across country. And I don't even like the new school. And I don't like Georgia. And I don't like being here. My parents moved. This is not strategic. Or you're thinking, I got my education. I got my degree. And I was at the top of my class. And I can't get a job. Where I'm spending my life is not strategic. This is not what I had designed. I'm working fast food. This is not what I had planned. This is not strategic. This is random. It just happened to be where I am. I just happen to be doing what I'm doing. And I'm doing this because there isn't anything else for me to do. And this is a random interruption to the plan that God and I had put together and that I was convinced was God's will for my life. So don't tell me that I'm the light of the world and I have strategically been set in a place. My life is a random connection of mistakes that I've made and other things that have happened to me. This is not strategic. I get that, okay? I get that. In fact, I bet every person in Jesus' audience listening to him that day thought the same kind of stuff to their health. I mean, what do you mean we are strategically placed? I believe that every person that God has ever used, even the ones that God has greatly used, they will tell you that for a large part of their life, they didn't feel like they were strategically placed. Everybody feels that way. Everybody feels that their life has been a little bit random at times. And I mean, Ed, I get that God is with me, and I get that God will be for me, and I get that God is trying to work all things out for my good. But let's just be clear. My life has been pretty random. Well, here's what I want you to do. And you can do this. I want you to imagine how the people in your story, I want you to imagine, for those of you who are here and you haven't been a Christian your whole life, or you're coming to church now, I want you to imagine how the people who got you to where you are, you're a follower of Christ. I want you to imagine how they see their part in your life. I want you to imagine how they would see it. I mean, who was that for you? Was it somebody at your work? Was it somebody that you were in something you did after work? Was it something you did in the community and there was a person there and they just happened to be there? Was it somebody that was near you at school? Was it somebody in your family? Was it somebody you hadn't ever seen before or met before and it just had a kind of happenstance? You were in the same kind of place doing the similar thing? Maybe it was somebody for you in a 12-step group and you're just going around about your regular business. I want you to think about the person who you would look back at now. You think back to the circumstances of the time and you look back, and I want you to imagine that when you tell your story and you look at the people in your life that you look at now and you see, when you tell your story about them, you say, God put them there for me. I can't imagine what my life would be like if that guy hadn't been my roommate. I mean, what would it have been like if when I was at the theater, those people hadn't just been there? What would it be like if, at that day, that guy hadn't been my boss or that guy hadn't worked for me? What would it be like if in that time when things fell apart, from your perspective, you look at them and you say, oh, I get it. God was reaching me through them. God was touching me through them. God was using them to get to me. God has strategically placed these people in my life. From their perspective, I bet if you went and asked them, they would say to you, well, okay, I can sort of see that, but I think God was just using me where I was. I mean, I was just talking to the guy at work. I was just listening to the guy who had a problem in his life, and I was just helping a lady with her other kids in the neighborhood. From the person who impacted you, I bet for most of them, they didn't feel like they were strategically placed. But you look back at it and you say, God put them there for me. God used them for me. So God looks at you where you are and says, I know you don't feel it. I know you don't see it. I know you wonder if it's true for you. But it's not random. And it's not impossible. It's not accidental. You are the light of the world. You are a city strategically placed. You are a light that I have lit, and I have placed it strategically on a stand. And if you will embrace your purpose, it will change how you live. It will be the answer to why you are where you are, doing what you do. It will be the reason for what you get up for. You have been strategically placed. You are the light of the world. It all starts with you admitting, maybe I am the light of the world. And maybe I didn't just, maybe we didn't just move from California accidentally. And maybe Maybe it's on purpose. I don't know that I'd have found church. I mean, maybe it's strategically. Maybe I have been placed here. And maybe I'm the light of a single-parent home, even though I did everything I could to never be a single parent. Maybe I'm the light of my class in a school that I hate. Maybe I'm the light of my family, even though they make fun of me because I'm the only Christian in my family. Maybe I have been strategically placed. Maybe I've been set in a place, not abandoned, not forgotten, not overlooked. Maybe I have been placed and set as the light of the world. I want you to think about that. I want you to wrestle with that and talk about that. The other thing that I want you to wrestle with this week as followers of Christ is, once I get to that, then what can I do in the place where I've been set? What can I do to help the people that I've been set around? What can I do to help them connect the dots between who I am and the God that I follow? What can I do? What can I do that would cause people's attention to move from, oh, she's such a great person. Oh, she's so joyful. Oh, he's such a great guy. He's so consistent. He'll do whatever he can for you. What can I do to move people from the wonderful things that God has done into me to see, they would see the Father who has poured joy into my life, who's poured resources into my life, who's helped me to be generous, who's helped me to be loving, who's built into me consistently. How do I bridge the gap between, he's a really nice guy, to, wow, I need to know more about his God? How can I help them connect the dots between this? Now, that question, that's a powerful question. And I'll just tell you, that's not a common question. And many of you have been in church your whole life long. You're in your 40s and you've been in church since you were a kid, and nobody's asked you to answer that question. You've never heard anybody ask that question. This is a really big question. What can I do? Not what can I pray? What can I do? Not what can I believe? What can I do? Not convictions that I can hold. What can I do with the opportunities that God is giving me in the places where I have been strategically set, in the places I work, in the places I live, in the places I play? What can I do? What can I do that moves beyond, he is such a good person, she's such a great teacher, he's such a great guy, he goes to church, I know that. What can I do to help people connect the dots between who I am and who I follow? What can I do? How would I draw people's attention toward my Father in heaven? I really hope you'll wrestle with that question. I hope you'll help each other answer that question for yourselves. If you'll wrestle with that question is big enough that you can come up with an answer. You will come up with an answer. And eventually that answer will help you realize, oh, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm where I am. That's why I'm doing what I do. That's why I'm with who I'm with. That's my purpose. That'll answer why you ought to get up every morning. Because we are the light of the world. You are the light of your neighborhood. You are the light of your school. You're the light of your company. You're the light of your ball team. You're the light of the senior class. You are the light of the real estate industry. You are the light. You are the light of the world. Imagine if all of us, community Christian who follow Christ, regardless of where we are, or regardless of whether we decided to be whether we are, we said, okay, God, I can't answer anybody's questions. I am not that smart. I haven't been doing this long. I can't answer their questions, but I accept my role. I accept who you called me to be. My purpose is to light the places I work, and the places I live, and the places I play, and the places you put me. I will accept that I have been set in those places strategically to help people connect the dots between who I am and who you are. And if you'll begin, you begin to make it a part of your prayer. You just begin to make it a part of your regular prayer. God, give me insight to answer this question. Help me to figure out How do I help people connect the dots between who I am and what I do? I want people to see who I am, but I want them to see you. Father, I want them to look at you. How can I do that? When you begin to ask that question, you begin to pray for an answer, you begin to regularly live out, this is my purpose. I am a light. And the truth is, you already know that this works because someone did this for you. That's why many of you are here. It's why it's not accidental that you're sitting and you're listening and joining in with this. It wasn't an angel that stood at the foot of your bed and goes, go to church. It was somebody that you would look back and say, they were set in my life. They were placed in my life. They lived and they drew your attention, not just to them, but they connected the dots and helped you see their Father in heaven. You are the light of the world. We are the light of the world. God has set us in the places that we are. This is our day. This is our generation. This is our time. We are the light of the world. Let me pray for you. And now, God, I pray for the people that are joining in today, that are with us today, wherever they are. For those that are already decided to follow you, I pray that they'll help you see, that you'll help them see that they've been set, they've been placed, that you've put them in a place to be the light of that place. Father, for people that are here that are not yet following, I pray that you'll make the light bright and they'll begin to connect the dots and they'll be drawn to you. And they'll go from who and what and where to, they'll see that their purpose in life, and you'll use them to draw people as well. Thank you for loving us, for allowing us to participate in your purpose in this world. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Employer, you have a meeting with your supervisor, and you say something like, again, this can't happen this week, it probably can't happen, it may not be even happen in this place. I'm trying to give you a bullseye on the target, and you have a meeting, you say, look, I want to see our company go forward. That's why I agreed to work here. I love what we do, and I want to see it go forward, and I want to be as productive as I can. I'm not giving you an ultimatum, but I've sort of figured out, from you and I talking, this is what you all need to do. Here's what I'm really good at. If you could help me over time move to this job description where I'm doing these things to accomplish this, that'd be helpful. I'm not giving you an ultimatum to do it this week or even this year, but if I could know that you and I are working together to move me to that position, I think I'll be better, I think the company will be better, and I know I'll accomplish a lot more. Now, most people, I can tell you that you can't do that today. Most of you won't be able to do that this year, but if you work for a reasonable employer, one that really cares about their company and what they're trying to do, they will appreciate your thought and your commitment and the work you've put into it, making yourself successful and them successful by the thought you've put into it. That's not something most of you can do today, but I'm asking you to check one of these next steps. We'll pray for you that you'll get this done as you move to find margin at work and the pressure goes down on your life and you do less and you enjoy it more and you have more room for life and relationships, which is what the God who loves you wants. That's what I want to pray happens. So would you pray with me? God, I'm so thankful that in this world you gave us useful things to do. And that you built every one of us with abilities to do something, to accomplish something in this world. Father, often our work gets ground down to just doing stuff, and it feels tedious to us, and it feels overwhelming, and it feels like slavery. God, I just want to say how thankful I am that I get to work at a place where the people that oversee me, they care about what I'm good at and what this place needs, and they allow me to work in that area and lead in that area and do those things. Thank you for people that cared about you and the way you made me and what need is here, and we've been able to marry that. I pray for everybody that's joining in and listening, they do the hard work necessary to figure out what's the one or two things that God made me to do. And then you'd give them the courage to do all that's necessary to get to that place not today, maybe not this week, not even this year. They'd see it as a goal and the target, that they'd get aligned with the way you made them. And they'd find margin at work, and they'd live with less stress. Thank you for Jesus and the way he leads us. In his name I pray. Amen.